Welcome back to episode 19, this week's episode of US Bike Racing News. I'm Britton Brown. On this week's episode, I'm going to recap Northstar Grand Prix. Yeah, I know I'm about a week late. I was traveling, but I had some pretty good picks and I want to highlight those. I'm also going to cover last weekend's Pro Nats, weekend of time trials and road race. There was some pretty exciting racing going on there. I'm going to give you my blue chip portfolio picks coming into the next couple of weeks, or at least talk about them. And lastly, and certainly not least, cycling lost a brother this last weekend at the Tour of Kansas City, and I want to talk about that as well. This is US Bike Racing News. Okay, let's start with the Northstar Grand Prix. I know I'm a little late, like I said, but here it goes. Coming into the Northstar Grand Prix, my overall pick on my blue chip picks was going to be Brandon McNulty for the overall. And I was pretty set on the fact that he was going to win the time trial, and I was right there. So that was a good pick for me. However, he didn't finish it up in the end, and I'll tell you what happened. St. Paul Criterium. Another pick, I didn't necessarily pick up Alfredo Rodriguez of Elevate as a blue chip pick. However, what I did mention is the fact that he was on fire the last couple of races. He was just nipped at the line at Tulsa Tough on Friday night under the lights. He was a pick for that night, kind of a dark horse, as they say. I think he could have won. He just went a little bit too late. However, I thought he might be the guy to upset Justin Williams Friday night in Minnesota, and that's exactly what he did. He took the helm, took the Jack Link Sprinter jersey, had a great finish, hands down was the top-notch sprinter of the field that night. That really led into the Cannon Falls road race. I dumped basically all my sprinters coming into Northstar, and I was kind of more focused on the GC type of guys out there. But I didn't pick the GC overall, and I certainly didn't think the sprinters were going to be so dominating over the weekend, and they were. Cannon Falls Road Race, I thought it might be subdued. I wasn't sure if somebody would get away. I think there were a couple riders. I think it was Corey Lockwood and Connor Brown with Elevate. They got off for a little bit. I think the wind got them, and once they got over 2 minutes, the peloton took notice and put the hammer down and brought them back. So there was a bunch of guys that got smoked in the final lap, but a couple of those guys did hang in there. Overall, Brad Huff took the win, and a commanding win it was. I was kind of pissed that I dumped him coming into Northstar. But again, I was more focused on getting myself positioned for GC guys for the next couple of weeks. And I'll talk more about that later. Uptown Criterium. Once again, Elevate was on the front, and Alfredo was picking up his points. He was bound and determined to win the Jack Links Sprinter jersey for the Northstar Grand Prix, and so that made things kind of open up for the finish. Silence tried to take control, lost control, and Ty Magner started gobbling up points throughout the entire race when it came to those bonus seconds. Ultimately, Ty Magner wins that criterium, takes the yellow jersey from Brandon McNulty. It's making for an exciting race, no doubt. Ty Magner's been on fire, so I'm not surprised he took a win. But, man, he gave it a valiant effort coming into the Mankato road race. And that was a real Donnybrook, as they say, coming into the last maybe 10, 15 miles. There was a select group of about 20 or so riders that got away from the rest of the field, and Raleigh just started punishing Magner. Magner hung on to the very end. Right in the very end, he finally came unattached, and we saw Colin Joyce take the stage victory as well as the yellow jersey, and that would pretty much seal the deal for Raleigh in the yellow. And they brought that right into Stillwater Criterium. Stillwater Criterium, I thought was kind of surprising. My pick was, and again, I didn't have Brad Huff as an overall portfolio pick for the weekend, but I thought Brad Huff was going to win. But you know what? When Colin Joyce takes the yellow jersey, all the game is going to change. All the responsibilities from the other riders are going to change, and they were going to defend that jersey. There was a group that got up the road that included Dylan Sunderland of the Aussie team. I think it's NSW. They're a Subaru team out of Australia. These guys are freaking good. And I was quite surprised that the Peloton was okay for letting those guys go up. Yes, up the road. Yes, wasn't a threat for GC. But you know what? Last day on Sunday, the week before at Tulsa Tough, they let an Australian go up the road, and they never brought him back. Once again, Dylan Sunderland goes up the road. He had a great finish the day before, by the way. He goes up the road. Nobody takes notice. He gets about 2 minutes and 20 seconds, not bringing it back with about 5 laps to go. Great ride by Dylan. He takes the win at the Stillwater Criterium. Overall, Colin Joyce gets the yellow jersey. Brandon McNulty was second and got the best young rider. Brian Gomez, another sprinter. He's on fire, had a great last couple of races. He's just a good finisher. I think he's one of the ballsiest sprinters coming into a finish. And he had a good time trial leading into it. He was competitive in the sprints. He was there in the end on the big stages. And he rounded up your podium with a third-place finish. Alfredo Rodriguez gets the Jack Links Sprinters jersey. And Tony Baca of Elbows, once again, I think he's a numerous winner of the King of the Hill, and that's what he did. So that pretty much rounds up Northstar Grand Prix. I didn't want to not cover it. I thought it was pretty exciting. I'm really just kind of patting myself on the back because I had some pretty good picks, but overall I did not get the GC. I did get Brandon McNulty correct. I did get Alfredo Rodriguez correct, and I did have some mentions on some of the other sprinters, but I went GC heavy, and it cost me. So anyway, that's it for Northstar. Okay, let's talk the U.S. Pro National Championships that took place this last weekend. I picked a podium full of U23 riders for the time trial, and quite frankly, I underestimated the World Tour riders. I did get 1 out of 3, so that's not bad. Nielsen Palace ended up third, but the man of the day was Joey Roscoff, a graduate of Hallowesco Citadel, who rides for BMC. He killed it. He finished almost a minute up on second place, which was his teammate with BMC, Brent Bookwalter. Made for an awesome time trial. A couple of surprise rides in there as well, both on the good and the bad. But the bottom line is Joey, you are the man for the time trial. Well done. Probably the best one I've ever seen you do from my standpoint. But anyway, let's go on to the road race. This was one of the best road races I've seen in years. There were attack after attack after attack going. The first hour, it seemed like there was something going off the front every 60 seconds, maybe even every 30 seconds, until finally about the 55-minute mark, I think it was, a group of 3 guys, or, I say group, 3 riders rolled off the front. The Peloton seemed to be content with that. They got out to about 2 minutes and 20 seconds, and Hallowesco ended up taking over the front, controlled that gap. I thought that was interesting because that told me a couple things. One, I was kind of curious with the hill that was in the road race, being so far away from the finish, was this going to be a sprint finish? And if so, who was the man? Ty Magner, man, that guy's been on fire. As I mentioned before, Hallowesco taking the front and control of the Peloton like they did, I thought that maybe that was going to be their man for the day. However, with about 5 laps to go, they brought that break back, and the fireworks started. Rowley, who never, ever gave a rider up, not even a rider for a pawn, to help Hallowesco control the time gap, began with their 12-man onslaught to literally throw haymakers at the Peloton. And ultimately, I think Evan Huffman was probably their guy, and Evan Huffman just wasn't there when he needed to be there. And that led to a group of 3 guys that rolled off with just a couple of laps left. Larry Warboss of Aqua Blue Sport rolled off the front with Alexi Vermeulen with Lotto Jumbo and Nielsen Palace with Action Hagens-Berman. You could almost sense that was the winning move from the very beginning, the way they were rolling. Alexi looked almost from the very beginning like he might be the strongest, but then you can kind of tell he was petering out a little bit. He's still an unbelievable rider, but Larry and Nielsen probably look the smoothest. And so ultimately, Larry ends up winning the day, gets his first national championship. Nielsen Palace ends up in second, and Alexei Vermeulen with Lotto Jumbo ends up in third. And that leads me to my final comment on the national championships. You know, USAC is a good old boy network, and unless you're in it, they're not going to show you much love or support. And which is why when you mention Larry Warbass or Alexei Vermeulen, most people have never heard their name. And, you know, these guys got the blow off for years, and yet they kept persisting in this sport. And because of that persistence, because of that talent, because of that drive, they ended up in the World Tour. And here's my point. For all you young riders that might be watching this video, I want you to know that, you know what, you don't have to go on the national team for the USAC national team to make it to the World Tour. That's not the end-all be-all for you. So you know what, if you have a passion for the sport, if you love what you do, you know, keep honing your craft, keep pushing, keep that drive, get those goals in front of you. You got to win races. You got to get yourself a coach. You got to be all in on this sport. But it doesn't take USAC to do that. So you know what, Larry, I want to give you a massive thumbs up, congratulate you on your first national championship, and let you know that some of us on the sidelines here have been watching you guys for a long time. We're excited to see what you've done, where you're going, and what your future's all about. So once again, congrats to those guys, and hell of a race to everybody that raced that race. It was very, very exciting. Okay, let's talk blue chip picks coming into this weekend. We've got the U23 National Championships for the time trial, the road, and the criterium, as well as the U.S. Professional Criterium Championships for the national stars and bars. Let's just say I think that you're probably looking at in U23 time trial, Nielsen Palace, Adrian Costa, and Brandon McNulty for your top three. I'm going to go on the road race. Man, I don't know. It seems like Action Hagens Bourbon probably sitting in the same place they were last year. They're full of tons of, firepower. I don't even know how you match that. They're probably going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 again. Somebody might get in there and disrupt that road race a little bit, or at least catch a ride. But I don't know. You know, when you look at the pros out there, the majority are going to be on one team. They'll have a game plan. Everybody else is going to be in it for themselves. It's going to make it tough. So that's kind of my prediction, is Action Hagens Bourbon, a repeat of last year. Criterium, man, that's anybody's game. Most of those pro riders are going to step away from the Criterium, so it's going to leave that wide open for anybody to take. So it's kind of a crash fest, and I know some of those guys have some big races coming on the horizon, so they'll probably avoid that. Don't know what to tell you, I guess is what I'm trying to say. The Professional Criterium Championships, my pick, man, Eric Young, Ty Magner, a guy like Eric Marcotte that could get off the front and just throw some freaking wattage down and get away. Brad Huff, does he repeat? I'm going to go with Ty Magner. He's my guy this year. I think he's, at this point in this part of the season, he's my strongest finisher. Eric the Machine Young, man, he's a close tie, but Ty Magner for the win. He's going to wear the stars and bars. Well, we'll end this episode on a sad note. This last weekend, we lost a brother in a tragic racing accident that happened at the Tour of Kansas City. Kasey Saunders, a Cat 1 racer with Dogfish Racing Team out of St. Louis, crashed into the barriers and lost his life Sunday afternoon. I personally knew Kasey and raced with him when he was just a pup, and you know, watching Kasey grow up and as a newbie racer to an elite racer was a blast, and it was an honor. And most importantly, though, Kasey was always a remarkable young man, a kind young man, and the world is going to be a sadder place without him. My heart and my prayers go out to Kasey's family and friends and to the St. Louis cycling community as a whole. Kasey, we love you. We'll miss you. We'll never forget you. I don't know. It's kind of a bummer way to end an episode, but thanks for watching. And you know what? It's just a reminder. Let's all be safe out there. Remember, we're all opponents, but we're all friends. And Kasey will be missed.